everybody. This is Bob. Welcome back to another edition of Geezerology's Freeform Friday. Today, my esteemed partner Scott is going to be taking a trip back to talk about The Blue Mask, the 11th studio album by Lou Reed. This album was released on February 23rd, 1982, which was near Lou Reed's 40th birthday. Scott is a scholar beyond reproach about Lou Reed, knows this man's music intimately. And while a roommate of Scott's in college and early years of us working in newspapers together, I had to endure everything Velvet Underground and Lou Reed. So this is going to be a trip back for me to those early days when Scott was trying to bring me into the fold. So, Scotty, take it away and tell us about The Blue Mask.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, we've known each other a long time. So you've been hearing Lou Reed's music for a long time, or at least you used to. I don't know that you ever really listened to it, but you've been hearing it, right?
That's right. And I will give you props. You did turn me on to the Velvet Underground Loaded, which I now love as an album. So you have had some impact on me.
Oh, maybe I can convince you on this one after.
All right, let's give it a shot.
Tell you all about it. All right. And just as Bob and everybody else who knew me back in the day, Lou Reed was a center of gravity for my musical interests for probably 30 years anyway. I got introduced. I heard Transformer when it first came out in the fall of 1972, and became an instant fan, and stuck with Lou until pretty much into the 2000s. The last album that he released that was legitimately a good rock album was Ecstasy in the year 2000. After that is when he went more on a bucket list sort of pursuit with his music, and he kind of lost me a little bit along the way there. But a good 30 years, Lou and I were pretty close, right? And he recorded nearly 24 studio albums during that time, during those 30 years. And, I loved and still am pretty familiar with pretty much every single one of them up until that time. But there was one Lou Reed album from the first day I heard this thing 40 years ago. It's been my slam dunk favorite Lou Reed album since the day it came out. Yeah, as we said, The Blue Mask was released on February 23rd, 1982. It was Lou's 11th studio album. This was released exactly a week before Reed's 40th birthday, which means we're about 3 or 4 days away from what would have been Lou's 80th birthday. So happy birthday, Lou. Happy 80th, wherever you are. But this was his 11th studio album that he recorded and released in less than 10 years. And that doesn't even count the landmark live albums he released during that time, Rock and Roll Animal in 1974 and Take No Prisoners in 1978. So this was a pretty prolific son of a gun during those and during his amphetamine-fueled younger days, right? I mean, he was cranking stuff out back in the 70s for a good 10 or 12 years there. I mean, there were several years in there where he released 2 albums a year, which was not unusual back in those days. That back when the music industry was all centered around album sales and radio play. So people generally cranked them out, but still that was a pretty good record. 11 record in less than 10 years is pretty good. So I've talked about The Blue Mask before on this channel. If y'all recall, if you've been around with us for a while, you know that Bob and I a few months back did a video where we talked about what we considered our 3 desert island discs, and this was one of my 3, The Blue Mask. and I got to tell you, I mean, if we change the rules for that discussion and said you have one desert island disc, you can pick one album that you can listen to for the rest of your life. It wouldn't take me 5 seconds to decide that this would be the one. I mean, this truly is my favorite album ever. I've always steadfastly felt that, and I probably always will, without question. Now, I'm not here to make an argument that the Blue Mask is absolutely the best or even the most significant or most important album in Lou Reed discography. Strangely, and I don't know why, but most critics and historians, even some longtime fans, don't really even consider this one among his best. You know, they usually gravitate to stuff like Transformer or New York, sometimes even Berlin, Rock and Roll Animal, the live album, Coney Island Baby sometimes gets the love it deserves. But for 40, like I said, for 40 years, this has been my number one, always will be. And I think there are a couple of things why I believe this. This is probably the most personal collection of songs that Lou Reed ever committed to one record. I mean, throughout his career, he would write a couple of, he would drop a song or two on an album here or there that was straight from the heart and told you exactly who Lou Reed was. But this is an entire album of these things. And this is, as I say, this was coming right as Lou was turning 40. It was coming off of a decade where Lou was just constantly working. He was just constantly taking drugs. He was just constantly going around and stirring up trouble and living a good life and doing a debauchery. And he came to a point in 1980. It started when he met Sylvia Morales, the woman at one of the punk clubs he used to hang out at. I think either CBGB's or the Bottom Line. I'm not sure which one they met, but Sylvia was somebody who hung out at the clubs, and they met. They got married. They fell in love, and they got married in 1980. And then during that time, Sylvia pretty much got Lou on the straight and narrow. She, they went and bought a big house out in the suburbs, moved into this big house in the suburbs. Sylvia pretty much took over his life. She pretty much took control and looked over his, guided him through his detoxification program and took over his business affairs and pretty much started running things for him while Lou just sat around and got sober and went through some pretty tough physical times and focused on getting his life in order, right? And wrote these songs. So once he got through this process, he kind of started it with a 1980 album called "Growing Up in Public," which kind of started this process. You could start hearing these more personal songs on that album, but this is when it came full flower. And also what was going on at this time, Arista Records had dropped him. He had dumped this big band that he'd been playing with for a few years, and so at this point, Reed decided that he needed to start over and get a focus on his life and start looking towards the future, right? So he and Sylvia went out. Sylvia got him signed to a new contract with RCA Records, who had dumped him a few years before, and then Lou spent a few years with Arista. Well, RCA Records took him back with a promise that he was going to be more dependable and more on the straight and narrow, and they would be able to depend on him, and he wouldn't go screwing around like he did for a while back in the early 70s. And Sylvia helped him go out and find a few people to put together a band, and he built a recording studio in that big house they did, and they went in and actually rehearsed there. I think they actually recorded this in RCA Studios, but he used his home studio to do the rehearsals and everything, and eventually started recording his albums in his home studio. But this album, The Blue Mask, is this is just a newly clean, a newly sober, a newly focused Lou Reed. He's just bringing it back home after a decade of debauchery and experimenting with different musical styles and just basically being a cartoon character. This is now Lou Reed getting back to basics. Put together a little tight 4-piece band consisting of Robert Quine on guitar, Fernando Saunders on bass, and Dwayne Perry on the drums. And they went in and just recorded some basic 3-chord rock and roll songs. It's basically put back on the path that he started with in the latter days of the Velvet Underground, where he just wanted to record basic rock and roll songs that appealed to a more adult intellectual crowd than your basic teeny bopper rock and roll fans, right? And it just so happened by design or sheer luck or whatever, but these two people who entered his life at this point, Sylvia, his new wife, and Robert Quine, his new collaborator, just turned out to be the perfect people to get him back on track. As I say, Sylvia took over his business affairs and helped him get sober and helped him refocus himself. And Quine was the guy who got him refocused on his original musical quest. He'd stopped playing guitar. Reed had stopped playing guitar for a while. He hired Quine. Quine came in. Quine was a guy who used to, during his college days back at Washington University in St. Louis, Quine got a law degree there. But Quine started traveling around the country and following the Velvet Underground around, and he decided that he wanted to be a musician and not a lawyer. So he followed the Velvet Underground around and pretty much learned at the feet of the master, and is just he's a perfect complement to Reed's guitar playing. Because they both play in the same style. Like I say, Quine learned how to play guitar by listening to Reed in the old Velvet Underground days. And these guys were just a perfect match for this. Of course, these collaborations wouldn't last long. I mean, he stayed with Sylvia for about, 15, 16 years after that. It was in the mid-90s. He and Sylvia broke it off, and he met Laurie Anderson, and that was all she wrote with Sylvia. And Quine, it only took a couple of years for him to piss Quine off and send him running for the hills. But for this moment in time, they were just a perfect people for him to work with, and it shows on this record. It's just a fabulous record. Reed and Quine are this devastating guitar duo. There's no flashy, Hendrix style, Clapton style guitar solos here. This is just two guys who know what they're doing. They're just really melodious guitar, really atmospheric guitar. They're just layered so perfectly on each other. And there's these moments of this controlled chaos and these frenzied feedback thrown in just for good measure, just to keep it exciting, right? Fernando Saunders. Saunders' bass carries quite a bit of load here. He and Dwayne Perry, who incidentally, just right after this is the only time Dwayne Perry ever played with Lou Reed. Dwayne Perry left right after this album was recorded and went and joined Jethro Tull, and then was Jethro Tull's drummer for about 15 years after this. But Saunders pretty much stayed with Reed for the rest of Reed's life. He would come and go, but for a couple of projects here and there. But Saunders became a lifetime collaborator with Reed after this. But anyway, Saunders' bass here is carries quite a bit of the load. He's really high in the mix on most of this. And he serves as sort of a third guitar player here, as much as and just mixes it up pretty well in a lot of spots with Quine and Reed. Lou's, as a songwriter, I don't think Lou was ever any better than he was at this point. But like I say, I mean, these are very personal songs. He was mostly, Reed throughout most of his career, he was mostly an observational guy. He was a chronicler. He was kind of a journalist, if you will, but he was always writing about other things and things that he saw. But these songs here are pretty much Lou's journal of what his life had been like for the previous year. Some of these songs on this album, and they're all over the place. Stylistically, it's all very cohesive, but the subject matter, it's all personal, but some of this stuff is just very happy and joyous, and some of this stuff is some of these topics of these songs are just horror show, right? But this is what he was going through. I mean, he had some good times and he had some bad times during this period when he was settling into his new life and getting sober. With these songs, he tells us about what his alcoholic days were like to start out. He's got a song called "Underneath the Bottle," which talks about what he was like as a drunk, right? He gets bruises on his legs and he has no idea where they came from, and he's just looking for all his happiness underneath the bottle is his phrase for it. He's just living his life underneath the bottle. That's one song. There's another one. There's another song here called "Waves of Fear," which is his his fears and paranoia as he's detoxing, right? And this song tells you all about what that's like, and it features this just really screechy guitar lead from Quine that sounds like it just comes straight out of the mouth of hell. I mean, this is just a frightening song. Also another one, the title track is also in that vein. It's just this loud, chaotic noise fest that closes side one. It's just barely controlled. I mean, the whole thing just almost goes off the rails on this track to close side one, and then he brings it all back at the beginning of side two with the song "Average Guy," which is Reed telling us about how his temperature is 98.6, and he likes to eat good food, and he's just your average guy as you see on the street, right? But most of all, what makes these songs stand out are what makes this album stand out are these songs where Reed is telling us about this beautiful, lovely life that he's found settling in with Sylvia, right? The opening song, "My House," just sets the stage perfectly. Saunders' bass takes the lead right up front on this, and then Reed and Quine's guitar just build a solid bass through this thing. And it's "My House." That's what do you think the title is? It's just him talking about the wonders of this new house that he bought and how he and Sylvia just love this place, right? And there's a passage about how he and Sylvia are playing with a Ouija board, and they drum up the spirit of his old mentor Delmore Schwartz, which is probably, I'm sure it's a little hyperbolic, but it all just goes into Lou's just getting his focus back on his life. And now I'm going to jump ahead to the closer of this album, which is a song called "Heavenly Arms," which is a great bookend with "My House." This song is just Reed's. It's just a straight out love song that he wrote to Sylvia. In fact, the chorus is just Reed just just saying the name Sylvia over and over again through the course of the song over some burning guitars, right? But this is a song that it's a love song to Sylvia, and it's done as an homage to the doo-wop music that Reed loved as a kid. It's not a straight doo-wop song, but it's a Lou Reed, Robert Quine style doo-wop song. Which means, nice, just a nice little street corner rock and roll song with some blistering guitar work in it. And it's a burner. And I got to tell you, this is probably my favorite Lou Reed song ever. I mean, this is the one. If I want to go listen to a Lou Reed song, this is the one I'm going to listen to. I love this thing. And this song, just like the album, the song is never really ever cited in any retrospective discussion of Lou Reed songs. And, there are books written about Lou Reed songs, right? But this is one that never really gets much attention. And I don't know why. It's my favorite. As far as I know, it's not a song that Lou ever played live. I've never heard a live version of this song. And Lord knows we've had plenty of Lou Reed live recordings out there and videos and things. And I've never heard this played live. And maybe that's one reason why it hasn't gotten much notice. But I absolutely love this thing. Lou gives it all he's got in this track with his vocals and his guitar work, and then the closing outro, which is a fairly extended outro, good. About a 2-minute long coda where Fernando Saunders comes in with this fantastic falsetto vocal on it, reminiscent of what we used to hear in doo-wop, and over this just barely in control guitar work going on with Reed and Quine. It's just fantastic. I mean, this song still brings tears to my eyes when I hear it to this day. But anyway, as you can tell, I love this album. No question about it. It's the best of the best in Lou Reed's extensive catalog, in my opinion. And I really have no idea why this album has been overlooked as it has with a milestone in Reed's catalog, but it has. It doesn't get a whole lot of attention from critics and historians. I don't know why. Again, I think it's the best he did, and in my opinion, as Bob can tell you, in my opinion, I think Reed did a lot of excellent things, and this is the most excellent of the excellent, in my opinion. So here's my recommendation: go find this album, turn the volume up, sit back, and enjoy the hell out of it. This is one, you hear this all the time. This album is intended to play loud. This one, play it loud and be proud and listen to it and enjoy the hell out of it. In my book, I don't want to give it a ranking on a 5-star system, because there aren't enough stars in a 5-star system to me to do justification to this album. So anyway, that's my take. Happy anniversary, Blue Mask. Happy 40th anniversary, Blue Mask. Happy birthday coming up. Happy 80th birthday to Lou, wherever you are. Yep, still miss the guy. Wish he was still around doing stuff like this. But anyway, Bob, thanks for listening.
Yeah, you're welcome, Scotty. I have a question, though. After all of that, I'm still not certain if you really like this album.
This is the album to end all albums, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to listen to this thing then, since that's such a hearty recommendation. I kind of dropped out for a minute or two, and I went back and did some research on this album, and the New York Times and Village Voice both praised it tremendously when it came out. So I'm going to check it out. And it's also good to know that Lou, clean and sober, could equal the work that he did back in his debauchery days. So yeah. Interesting take on this, Scott. Thank you very much. Please check with us every Friday when we post these videos. And on our Freeform Friday, we take a quick look at a book, movie, piece of music, anything that kind of captures our fancy. And we thank you for taking your time to share this with us, and check out all of our Geezerology videos on YouTube. And you can also read our written product at our blog, geezerology.com. So be sure to check that out too. Thank you very much, everybody.